Hey, everybody. This is Dr. Turner, and I wanted to take a few minutes to create a video to share with you about our course syllabus so that you would have it to refer back to and answer any questions, because it's likely that we won't take as much time in class to go over it, except any questions you might have. So, this course is WL 536. It's a graduate level course called Culture, Community, and Language Advocating for Multilingual Learners, and this is the fall of 2026. So just to begin, this provides my contact information, my office location, our class time, and our class location for the semester. My office hours will be Tuesdays and Thursdays from 12 to 2 after our class with a little break in between to kind of get resettled. So feel free to stop over and talk with me at that time. It's always nice if you send an email that you're going to drop by so that I know to expect you. You can also email me to schedule another day or time to meet if needed. Okay. My email response time tends to be about 24 hours, usually less than 24 hours, honestly, maybe a little bit longer on the weekends. And we are using a Moodle website for our course. So you will be navigating over to my Woofware. The course schedule is also located on Woofware. And of course, 536 is a required class for the MA with TESOL concentration. The catalog description of this course really is this looking at an intersection between education and immigration, specifically within the context of the United States. So, as it says here in the catalog, this course provides an examination of the complexity of multiculturalism in American society and the challenges faced by immigrant families in adapting to U.S. institutions. Emphasis on understanding historical, legal, cultural, and pedagogical issues with respect to multilingual learners in the classroom. Students cannot receive credit for both 436 and 536. So while it is certainly this context around US institutions, there is leeway in which, if you're thinking about teaching English in another country outside of the United States, that you could shift some of our projects to be more international in focus. And so, as we come to those assignments, I'll try to mention that. But if you ever feel like, oh, I would really like to shift my focus on this project to thinking about teaching, in France or in Spain or in China or some other country, then please just reach out to me and let's discuss the possibilities of that because I want these assignments to all be useful for you in the future. Okay. All right. So I provide an overview and a little bit about terminology. And then the standards covered in this class come from the initial TESOL teacher preparation program standards, comes out of the International TESOL institution. And we focus on two standards, standard two and standard five. So you can see from that little chart right here on the right-hand side, standard two is ELLs, English language learners, in the sociocultural context, and standard five, professionalism and leadership. So our goals in this course are really to focus on those two standards in particular. Along those lines, you'll see there's a list of standards that we will be meeting and learning outcomes, along with the same thing for the standard five, professionalism and advocacy. So please take a moment to look through those and let me know if there's any questions. Your required text for the class is the fourth edition of Wainwright's textbook, Foundations for Teaching English Language Learners. Please do not buy an earlier edition. We need the newest edition. It's the most up-to-date edition. However, the full textbook is available online to NC State students through the libraries. I believe there's like a limitation of only one user per time or at a time. But you can download, print, email, save up to 100 pages. That will certainly cover the number of chapters we need in this course. Now, in an additional course, which is in 537, we will also be using chapters from this textbook. So if it's something that you feel like you want to invest in, you can see it is about $125 unless you can find a used version. I think that you can get along with finding, borrowing, or downloading the chapters that you need. Okay. There's also a choice of book for book study, and I've shared details about that in another video, but they're novels of your choice. Those tend to range between like $7 and $12. And typically you can find them on Amazon or at a public library. So those may be purchased, or you may borrow my copy for a short time to return and then return it to me. All other articles, peer-reviewed articles, chapters, documentaries, podcasts will all be available online through a shared Google folder. I do not link the article specifically to the Moodle page because I find if things shift, like the weeks shift or the assignments shift, then I'm moving all these files. So I prefer to keep them in a shared Google folder that I will give you access to so that you can just find the author's last name of the article that you need, download it or print it or whatever you prefer, and then go from there. I do want to add the caveat that this course engages diverse scholarly perspectives. My goal is always to develop your critical thinking, your analysis, your ability to debate and defend your point of view. So inclusion of a reading does not necessarily imply endorsement. Okay, technology requirements. It is helpful to have a laptop for class meetings. Sometimes I'll point you to a website or a QR code or another resource. So it's often useful to have a laptop. You can check out a laptop from the NC State Library if needed. These are the softwares that you'll need for the class and the computer and digital literacy skills that we expect you to have in graduate school. And then we get to the components of your grade for this course. And it consists of 6 different items, which we'll talk about each one of those in turn right now. So beginning with participation in reflective journals. So it's really expected that you are an active participant in class, especially with a small group in our class. It's just essential to our conversation and to your own learning and to our conversation and the richness of our discussion. As it says here, our class thrives on discussion, collaboration, and the exchange of diverse perspectives. So by all means, diverse perspectives are encouraged and wanted. By engaging fully, whether through sharing ideas, listening thoughtfully, asking questions, or contributing to group activities, students not only deepen their own understanding, but also enrich the learning experience for everyone. So participation is not about having all the answers. It's about showing up with curiosity, openness, and a willingness to think critically with others. Participation in the course includes preparedness for class, timely completion of readings, respectful engagement, contribution to peer feedback should the occasion arise, and professional communication with me and your colleagues. You will receive a participation grade each week. In addition to that participation grade, this first component of 15% also includes reflective journals. So throughout the semester, I'll ask you to complete ongoing reflective journal entries. There's a template. You'll complete 15 in total. And it's just a space for you, a safe space. You won't be sharing this with classmates, just with me, in which you can explore connections between what you're reading, what you're thinking about, what's going on in other classes, what you're seeing in classroom experiences or observations. And it's really just intended to be this space for critical thinking, for reflection, and not necessarily just a summary of what you're doing, right, of readings. But it's really what are you thinking about those and how are they making connections for you? So journal entries should include the following. Reflections on course readings or class discussions, connections between theory, what we're reading about oftentimes, and then practice, what you're seeing on the ground in classrooms. Observations and experiences from community field experiences, if applicable, depending upon if you've had the chance to do one or not when you write your reflection. So if you attend a community field experience on a week when you have a reflection due, then you could include that in that week's reflection. More on community field experiences in a moment. Evolving beliefs about language learning, culture, identity, and teaching. Moments of challenge, discomfort, growth, or insight. Consideration of how schools and educators can better support multilingual learners and families. Connection to other outside sources, like maybe you hear a podcast or read an article or hear a news report or see a YouTube video. That is wonderful to make. And then I always ask you to include a quote that spoke to you, that called your attention, that you found interesting or maybe problematic or even confusing. And then explain those, unpack those a little bit about why you chose that particular quote. Students are encouraged to write honestly, thoughtfully, and critically while making connections across personal experiences, course concepts, and broader social, cultural, and educational issues. Or perhaps what's going on in your home country. If you're from another country, you can certainly also make connections to your home culture, country, language, etc. Journals may incorporate written reflection, but they can also include images, artifacts, other multimodal forms when appropriate. And the journal entry should be different each week. Like maybe one week you connect to a news article that you read in the New York Times. Maybe the next week you include a photo from a community field experience, or maybe the next week, you felt the class discussion was particularly interesting for some reason or problematic, and you want to share and kind of reflect on that. So each reflection should be slightly different. They should not just be a cookie cutter response from each week. As in most things in life, it is what you put into things that you get out of it. And we know metacognitively, it's so important to reflect continuously and thoughtfully on our learning and our development as educators, especially multilingual educators. And so this is really a space where I encourage you to make that move. Okay. So this goes on to say that the goal of the reflective journals is to support the development of reflective practitioners who thoughtfully examine their assumptions, experiences, and practices in relation to multilingual learners and communities. It might be that through an experience that you have as a part of our program, that you're coming into contact with multilingual learners that you've never worked with before, perhaps from a different cultural group or a different linguistic background. And I want to know, how does that shape or change or impact you in terms of becoming a multilingual teacher of English? Reflection journal entries should be between about 500 and 750 words, although the quality of reflection is obviously more important than the exact length. So I will grade your participation and your reflective journals each week. You'll get either full credit or 75% or 0%. So it's a pretty easy way to grade. I do that on purpose for myself. I also will model to you some decisions I make as a teacher, right? So just thinking pedagogically here as well, and how I will respond to those. Your journals will not be shared outside this class. They will not be shared beyond me. So anything that you say in a journal just stays between you and me, and that's it. Okay. All right. The second component of your grade is the community field experiences. This is something that I'm really excited about because we'll get to participate in experiences outside the classroom walls. You are required to complete 4 of these field experiences during the semester, and we have a number of them listed for you, some with particular dates, some are still in the works, so more on that soon. But you also have the opportunity to go to cultural events in the area or centers, right? But also you can suggest your own cultural event. Say that you live in Cary, North Carolina, and there is a cultural event like I know when I was in Cary. I'm just thinking about Three Kings Day, and they had a whole celebration with Latino dancing and food and everything. So something like that as well would certainly be fine, but you do have to clear it with me and get permission prior to the event. So make sure that you reach out and email me so that we have a documentation of that. Talking to me in class is great too, but it's great to have that email so we can say, oh yeah, remember we did talk about this. So please make sure that you follow that. Now, a documentary is also allowed. So let's just say that it's difficult for you to get around, or you have to rely on, classmates to give you transportation. You can, out of those four cultural field experiences, choose a documentary for one of those. And I have listed here a few being Asian in America, I Learn America, and then the Jose and Mr. Ramos. So three of them. I can try to add to this as well, or you might also have some documentaries in mind that you'd like to see that you think touch on issues related to immigration and education. So that is what these documentaries really focus on. For each of these four experiences, you will submit a short multimodal reflection. The idea is you're capturing your observations, your reactions, and then your connections to TESOL, to our field, especially to teaching and to learning. Okay, a little bit more detail here, so you can take a look at that and how you'll do your multimodal reflection options. Please note that no generative AI tools may be used in your reflection, and that goes for every single assignment in our class. So you do not want to be utilizing those. I really want to see your own ideas, your own work, your own critical thinking. You will be asked to turn in your multimodal reflections periodically through the semester, and you can see those reflected on the course schedule. So, for example, it'll say multimodal reflection for community field experience. Number one, due, right? And they'll say number two, number three, number four. They're spread throughout the semester. It's like one every 4 weeks for the 16 weeks. Um, you can always turn it in earlier. You can turn in multiple ones at the same time, but you have to hit those four deadlines. So, as we're beginning the semester and you're looking at your calendar, just think through when and how and which ones are you going to attend. Okay. There's different multimodal versions for you to submit, and then how I'll be grading your reflection. Okay, great. So that was community field experiences. So we have covered participation for 15% and the field experiences for an additional 15%. Now we're going to go into the book study, which is an additional 15% of your grade. This is something I love to do with my students because I think it gives you an opportunity to go really in depth on a particular story, build some empathy, some understanding of people's experiences as newcomers, especially to the United States. So you're asked to choose one novel that looks of interest to you from the list. Make sure it's not one you've read previously. I want you to expand your horizons. You'll be asked to read the book and then create a short video presentation with a PowerPoint, kind of like what I'm doing right now. It's really easy to just use Zoom, record yourself. You do have to have yourself in the video, and you have to have some kind of visuals. Um, Typically, PowerPoint slides or Google Slides are the best to guide your students through, what did you read? What did you learn? What did you like? What did you not like? And there are prompts for that book study as well. About halfway through, like the time that you have to read the book study, I will ask you to do a book study check-in. And that's like a one-page report about how it's going. How much have you read? What is a quote that stands out to you or a passage that stands out to you and why? What's your plan for finishing the book on time? So just kind of plan ahead for that as well. Okay, as I mentioned, I have each of those books. So if you want to borrow the book, for a short time, maybe make a copy of it, you're welcome to do that and then return those to me. Or you can pick them up at a public library or pretty cheaply online. Probably most of these have used versions if you would like. All right, so that was another 15% of your grade. Now we're moving into the last three assignments of the semester. And this one is called the Critical Autoethnographic Narrative, or CAN. This is an essential part of your coursework and something that will be repeated throughout TESOL coursework, because your identity work will not just stop after this semester. It will continue each semester that you are here in our program, and we want you to document how you're changing over time based upon the experiences you're having in coursework and in the field. So the critical autoethnographic narrative is just what it sounds like. It's an opportunity to think back on your own life, your upbringing, your cultural background, and how that shapes who you are and how you see the world today. Because as we'll talk about, we really carry with us our cultural lens and how we view multilingual learners, decisions we make in the classroom, etc. So this is a way of kind of unpacking that identity that we have that is shaping, right? None of us are fully cooked, as I say, but we're certainly in progress. Okay, so that's the critical autoethnographic narrative. Just taking a look here, that's another 15%. Now we're going to talk about student-led discussions for 20% and then finish up with the culminating project, which is the final 20% of your grade. So, really important for me in terms of my philosophy is that you're as active as possible in our class discussions. So, along those lines, I'm going to ask you to lead 3 class discussions over the course of the 16 weeks. So, it's like 32 classes. You'll choose just 3, and each presentation or discussion, rather, focuses on only one reading or material for the class. And so I ask you to read that article, review that, and then also provide an additional resource that students would use to add to their understanding of this topic. Okay, so you'll add this additional article. It can be a non-scholarly article. It could be a podcast. It could be a video. It could even be a song, or a website that relates to the topic that you are going to discuss with the class, lead that discussion. But it adds like kind of this different lens, this different angle to understand your topic. So be creative, think, look around, find a good resource for students to engage with. Now, that additional resource is due 1 week prior to your leading the class discussion. So it's important you actually send those to me via email with WL 536, additional resource for classroom discussion, a week prior to our class meeting. So we meet Tuesday, Thursday, starting at 10:15. So if you're leading a discussion on Tuesday, the previous Tuesday by 10:15, I need to have that resource. Okay. Really, really important. And then on the day of your classroom discussion, you just begin with an interesting introduction, an engaging hook, where you kind of set up the scene about what we're going to be discussing. And then you lead the class through class discussion with questions or maybe a activity. And then at the end of class, you're asked to synthesize, kind of make some connections, make some summaries about what was discussed. This really depends upon what comes out during the discussion, and then offer some closure and some check for students learning with some kind of formative assessment. So this is almost like a mini lesson in a sense. You're going to be modeling what it looks like to have student engagement in a classroom. And these last between 45 minutes to an hour. Okay, so there's more information here and information about how to sign up for your particular 3 class discussions. The final project of your course grade is a culminating project. And for this, I provide 3 project options. And those include interviewing a multilingual learner, interviewing a multilingual teacher, or conducting a research project on a course-related topic of interest, kind of more of a traditional project. So I want to give you those 3 options. You choose which would be most useful to you, most interesting to you, and then you will present your work in a written format, or if you want to do it in a different multimodal creative type format, you just have to get approval from me ahead of time earlier in the semester. And so you can read more about this culminating project here in this assignment. Along the way, I will ask you to do a couple of check-ins. You will have time in class in which we'll go over the assignment together. We'll brainstorm interview questions. We'll talk about ethical interviewing. And then by week 6, you have to decide which of those 3 options you're going to do for the culminating project. By week 8 to 11, you're going to be conducting your interviews, and you have to actually turn in the transcript of the interview and analysis, Or if you're going the traditional research paper route, you have to submit a completed annotated bibliography, and that's by early November. By the 17th of November, you're going to submit a draft of your full project for feedback, and then your project is due beginning of December, December 7th by noon. So much more about that coming up, but just to introduce you to what is coming. Okay, a little bit about the TESOL portfolio. As you work through the MA and TESOL, please remember that you're responsible for creating and maintaining a personal TESOL portfolio. If this is your first semester in the master's program, you will begin that this semester. You will have information there about how many hours you've spent observing, teaching. You're going to have your CAN that you write for this class. You're going to have lesson plans that you use. So, for example, for your discussion leading for this class, you would include those lesson plans in your portfolio. You might have recordings of your teaching, not reaching opportunities, and as well as teaching evaluations. Finally, any of your research papers. So, if you do a research paper for this class, you could include that. Any reflection essays that you would like to include, like your reflection journal for this class, or teaching philosophy that you write. Okay, so really important. Our grading scale follows NC State's policy. Please note that keep an eye on the grades in Moodle, on the grade book. If you have a question about a grade, you have about a week after the grade is posted to address your concern. That's just to prevent me from having a question at the end of the semester when it's difficult to remember. But for the most part, your assignments are graded by rubric, and so there should be a trail that matches, the rubric and then the grade in the grade book. So if there's questions about that, please be sure to reach out. As I mentioned, the course schedule is available on Moodle. And for course policies, one of them has to do with email. Of course, all of us are very used to email, but it is expected as a graduate student that you're sending polite and professional emails. Those are expected from all students. If you send an email over the weekend, please note that it might not be answered till Monday. Check the course syllabus, talk to a classmate before emailing me about a course assignment because it's likely that your answers will be found in the course assignments. I have taken a lot of time to make these assignments and to think through all the details, hoping that it is as clear as possible for you to follow and understand. I will note here that sometimes students ask me for examples of projects. And because I tweak and change my assignments every semester, uh, I oftentimes don't have students who have done the exact assignment that you're doing. Maybe they've done some component of it, but for that reason, it's really on the student, it's really on you to be creative and to interpret the assignment sheet as well as you can to produce the best quality project that you can, not relying on other people's examples, right? And kind of trusting yourself as a professional, a growing professional, to do good work. Finally, if you don't hear back from me, let's say you email me and it's been 48 hours, it's been 2 days, just assume the email probably got covered up or lost or somehow I missed it. It does happen, and don't worry about emailing me again. Please do so and just say, not sure if you saw this or trying to get it back to the top of your inbox. Okay, let's talk about attendance and other policies. Okay, so attendance and participation is graded daily, as I've mentioned. I do follow the university attendance policy, which is listed here for you to review. So, under that policy, here's the following guidelines. NC State has a commitment to all students, including those who represent the university in official capacities. So therefore, students receive excused absences for a reasonable number of anticipated absences and then unanticipated absences, which are like emergencies, okay, or things you didn't expect. Okay. Anticipated absences are, think about like you have a conference that's coming up and you know you have to go away, you're going to miss class, but it's for an academic reason. Or this usually doesn't apply to graduate students, but let's just say you are part of a sports team here at NC State and you have a game away, therefore you have to miss class. That is an anticipated absence. We know about it ahead of time. Therefore, you should clear it with me. Let me know about it ahead of time before the absence. And there is usually some kind of documentation. Same goes for, let's say you're called to jury duty. Let's say that you have a religious observance that you want to, miss class for, or any military duty. Okay, there's usually documentation for those things. So those are anticipated. You can have as many of those as you need within reason, right? I don't assume you're going to be going to five, six conferences in a semester, but you might be going to one or two, and that's certainly okay. Unanticipated absences are the ones that we don't count on in the beginning of the semester. So these are things like, you're sick or you get injured. Let's say you break your foot and you have to go to, urgent care to get it x-rayed and get a cast or something. Um, that's an unanticipated absence, right? It would be unproductive for you to come to class. Maybe you're in pain, or maybe you're going to get somebody else sick, or it's just not a good situation. The other unanticipated absence would be like a death or serious illness in the family of you, right? So let's say your mom or dad or a sister or a sibling or somebody that you need to go and be with. That's also an unanticipated absence. Now, you don't know those are going to happen. So as soon as possible, but not more than 1 week after returning to class, please be in contact with me, hopefully sooner, about what's going on, right? I was sick, I had to go to the doctor, or, whatever happened. Okay. Now, this does not mean that you scheduled your dermatology appointment and therefore it's okay for you to miss class. That is not excused. Okay. These are things for illness, injury, and then other serious death or illnesses in the family. So, with unanticipated absences, you will receive a zero for participation points because you're not in class, but you can make up any assignment that was due that day. So, let's say you miss a class and the reflection journal was due that day at 10:15, and you were at the doctor's office getting your leg casted. You can make that up within a week for full credit. Okay. You don't get your participation points back for your missed class. That it will be a zero. But at least you get to turn in your assignments. Now, let's say that it's an absence that doesn't fall into one of these two categories, right? It's not an unanticipated absence like illness or injury, and it's not an anticipated absence like the example I shared that you scheduled work or you schedule an appointment for yourself during class time. For those absences, you will not receive your participation points, and you will not be allowed to make up your assignments that are missed because you were not in class. So let's say you miss class for a doctor's appointment, you cannot turn in your reflection journal because you weren't in class. So class and homework go together, assignments go together. Okay. So yes, hope that's clear. If you have questions about it, please let me know. But hopefully that is really clear and spelled out to everybody. Okay, academic integrity and honesty. I'm sure you've heard about this a lot over the past several weeks or even as you entered the university. But you are assumed that you're complying with the university policy on academic integrity found in the Code of Student Conduct and the PAC Pledge. Every time you turn in any assignment in this class, you are attesting to your PAC Pledge that you have not received help, you have not used AI tools, that this is your own work that you are submitting as such. Okay. And that goes on here with a statement on the use of AI. Um, while we know AI has value, I really want you to develop your critical thinking and develop that in this class. So usually it's almost, I would say, a blanket statement. I do not allow AI generative tools to complete any portion of an assignment submitted for a grade in this class. If there is a reason to use it, I will be sure to let you know. But in general, I really want to know what you're thinking about, the ideas that you have for the class. Okay, students with disability through the Disability Resource Office, we're happy to provide accommodations. Please go through them and then they contact instructors on your behalf. Please take advantage of that if you have a verifiable disability. Trans-inclusive statement. Please let me know if you prefer a different name or pronoun other than what's listed in the student directory. Happy to honor those in the classroom. And then a mental health reminder. Just like those unanticipated absences, there are going to be unanticipated barriers and challenges that are going to come up in the semester. Maybe the workload is higher than you anticipated. Maybe this is your first time back in school after an absence. Maybe you're not even sure, what your goal is following this master's degree. All of that can cause a lot of stress. And that is understandable. And we want you to get the support and the help that you need. And the best place to go is this counseling center. They are awesome. It is free. It is part of being a student here at NC State. We want you to use them. So please reach out to them with any concerns that you might have, or, just feeling like the stress kind of building up against you and to a point that's not healthy. Okay. And then, as always, our syllabus is a flexible agreement. I've tried really hard to make our course schedule one that we can stick to and that makes sense and that will help us get through all of the objectives for the course. But as always, things will happen and we might have to move things around or modify a little bit. So please keep that in mind that I will communicate those in advance. Students assume responsibility for any risk involved during transportation to and from community field experiences and also while we are doing the field experiences. If you are facing any challenges with food or housing, please be sure to reach out to me, but also the PAC Essentials program is a good place to go. They provide support for students who are facing those challenges, and you're not alone, so please be sure to use those resources. Course evaluations, just like you're getting a grade at the end of the semester, I need you to give me a grade at the end of the semester and really provide feedback about what is going well and where I need to make changes. It's really important for my professional development as well as information about how I'm doing. So we'll talk more about this towards the end of the semester, but it is expected that everyone fills out this course evaluation. Um, just a little bit more emergency preparedness. Just kind of knowing where you are on campus is always a smart idea, and how to call campus police. So from a campus landline or from a cell phone, you can use 911 or you can use the 515-3000 number. Um, yeah, it's just always important to be aware. And then resources, if you need support academically, there are resources galore for you. So please look this up. Ask me about it if you have questions. If I can connect you to some resources to support you through the semester, I'm happy to do that, more than happy. And then finally, I just included a list of professional organizations that I'm a part of that support multilingual learners and their teachers. They may be an organization that you'd like to check out, learn more about, or maybe even become involved in the future. So I just wanted to suggest these for you and have a place for you to come back to on that. Wow. Okay. So lots of information. You can see why I didn't want to do this during class time. And this is now a resource you can come back to during the semester. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll have time in class as well to discuss all of this. Thank you for watching Extra Credit Points. And I look forward to seeing you very soon. Bye, guys.